Want to achieve network marketing success? Then you're in the right company. Hello, and welcome to Leave Nothing to Chance, hosted by networking marketing giant John Solider. Learn everything you need to know about the network marketing space from somebody who's actually done it. Join us every week for front row seats as we feature some of the finest and most successful personalities in network marketing. Leave nothing to chance. Join us now.
Well, folks, this is going to be a privilege. A gentleman that I've known of for many, many years and have the privilege today to invite to the Leaving Nothing to Chance podcast, and that's Mr. Rudy Revak. But before we turn the show to Rudy, I just want to tell you, Rudy was the third recipient of the DSN's Lifetime Achievement Award. And you know, the people who have received that award are icons in our industry. Rudy is certainly one of them. He's been an owner. He's been a top distributor. He's been a mentor. He's been a teacher. He's been a voice of reason in our industry now since 1970. So with that, Rudy, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks. Thanks for having me on this show. I really look forward to it.
Well, hey, so do I. And let's get into some questions. Your career has been at the least amazing and inspiring. But let's get into some of the talking points, because just like somebody that's listening that's maybe been in the industry a short period of time, you had to start somewhere. How'd you start? Where'd you start? How did it all come together for you?
Oh, my. Do you want the whole story or a condensed version?
Whatever you want to share.
Well, I'll start at the beginning. I was born in Germany. My mom and dad were Hungarian and Romanian refugees who escaped after the war. And that alone is kind of a long love story and major persistence story. My dad was captured by the Russians and escaped from them and worked his way back. And my mom and my sisters, my grandparents had to flee because the Russians were taking over in Hungary. And they wound up in a refugee camp in southern Germany. And my dad, after escaping from the Russians, worked his way back and found them in this refugee camp. And then this was in Austria, was the camp. And then the Austrians didn't want all these refugees, so they shipped them off to Germany and put them just in barns, basically. And that's where I was born, in Germany, as a refugee. And then when I was 5 years old, my parents came to the United States. And I spent most of my young life. And by the way, that story, in case someone might be interested, it's not about me. It's about my family's journey through World War II and the difficulties they went through and how persistence and determination make a huge difference in what they went through. I authored a book called Iron String. I don't know if you can see it on there, but this Iron String, and I'm not trying to sell the book. I'll send you one for free. But the story itself, for people like us, for people who have the courage to try and the willingness to succeed and the determination to work. For people like us, it's a great story. That's where I got my inspiration from in the young days. My mom and dad were very loving, honorable, and faithful people. And so fortunately, I grew up very well. But we were on a chicken farm and we were poor. And I spent most of my young life working hard on a chicken farm and growing up poor. When I got out of school, I went to work in a retail store. And then shortly thereafter, I wound up in the United States Army. And when I came home from Vietnam, after my 13 months in Vietnam, they said under the GI Bill, I could go to college. And they were willing to give me $271 a month to go sit in school. I needed the money and I was good at sitting. So I got out of the Army. I went back to work in a retail store and I was going to college full time. When one day I came home and literally the telephone is ringing and it's a stranger on the other end of the phone who says, "Hi, would you like to make more money?" And I immediately said, "Don't hang up." I said, "I'm interested." And they invited, and it is a total stranger. He was just calling people out of the telephone book, just numbers. And, nowadays people say, "Well, how do I find new people? I don't know. How about a telephone book? We don't have them anymore." Numbers. Anyway, so they invite me to a business presentation. And I had to go 60 miles to get to this business presentation because I was in a little farm town in the middle of New Jersey. And so I go to this meeting. There were a lot of people standing around with nice suits on, shaking hands, welcoming me. And the guy goes to the front of the room, and the first thing he writes on the top of the board was $30,000 in big letters. Now, this is November of 1970. And $30,000 back then was a lot of money. For $30,000, you could buy I don't know, a Lamborghini back there, but that was a lot of money. And that whole evening, all I did was I had my eyes focused on the 30,000, and he went on to draw circles and discounts and percentages and showed how it worked and how you made this money. And I didn't understand any of it. But I looked at that 30,000. I said, if they can show me how to make that, I'll worry about the rest of it later. Problem was that business that I joined cost $3,217. And I went home that night. I was still living with my parents. I went home that night and I was excited. And I got out a napkin and I drew on a napkin some circles and squares. And I tried to show my dad what I had seen. Now, of course, I didn't remember much of it. And my dad said to me that night, he said, Rudy, he said, those people are trying to show you how to work smart and not hard for the rest of your life. And that made sense, okay? And I said, yeah, but Dad, $3,200, there's no way I can get $3,200. Now, you got to remember, 1970, $3,200, you could buy a brand new Mustang for $3,200. What's a new Mustang cost today? 45, 50, whatever. So that was a lot of money then. And so there's nothing I could do. And by the way, some people say, well, wow, was that one of those pyramid selling companies because they were charging $3,000? Yeah, but you got to go back into the context of the day that was. In the 1970s, there was no UPS. There was no FedEx. There was no one to Amazon to deliver your products overnight. We were what they called a direct distributor, which means we were the little local warehouse, if you will. And then I recruited people who came to my place, picked up the products and went out and sold them. So I became this little local warehouse. And so it took about, 10, 12 days. And one day my dad came to me with a check for $3,217. He had put up his house and put up the farm. They had no money. They put the house and the farm up so I could borrow this $3,200. To this day, it makes me emotional. And thank God he had confidence in me because he knew I was willing to work. I was a hard worker, and so he didn't doubt that. And he said to me, he said, I want to give you the chance I never had. And so I took that $3,200. I gave it to the guy who had called me, and I never saw him again. Well, that's not true. About 10 years later, I saw him one time. He took my check and then he was gone. But thank God there were a lot of good people around back then who helped me. Marty Day, Joe Catronio, of course, Jim Rohn. He was one of our trainers back then. And in those days, that was before he was Jim Rohn. He was just Jim back then. He wasn't the famous Jim Rohn yet. But they were magic in helping me to grow. And for the first 9 months I was in the business, I did awful. I mean, I really did poorly. I sold a little product. I made a few dollars. I recruited a few people. They didn't stick around. I was only 23 years old. I'd never been in business before. None of my friends on my farming community had $3,200 to invest. So it was tough. But my background, as I said, I'm German. So that makes me hard-headed, and I don't quit. And I just wouldn't give up because I looked at other people when I go to the meetings and the trainings, and I saw people that were making it. I said, man, if they can do it, so can I. One of these days, I'll figure it out. And thankfully, by going to trainings with the Jim Rohns and other people, it started to turn around for me. And once it started to turn, boy, things got good, and it was terrific. So that's kind of how I got started.
Amazing, amazing. So let's talk about the military a little bit. Let me thank you on behalf of the next generation. I'm one generation behind you age-wise. It doesn't say enough thank you to the Vietnam vets because you guys did something that needed to be done at a time where it wasn't necessarily understood. So thank you for your service. And along those lines, Rudy, what did you learn from your military experience in terms of leadership and other organizational development?
Well, I often say to people to this day, I personal feelings is I think that the draft should be continued. One of the reasons is because when I went into the military, I was raised in a certain society. I was a farm boy. Most of the people around me were farm boys. We were in a small community. All of a sudden, I wound up in the military, and here I am thrown in with people who are from, the inner city. And, when we get in a fight and we show a knife, we say, well, we're going to, we're act like, well, we would never use it. But all of a sudden, here I'm thrown in with people who, they meant it. When they were talking about knives and guns and things, they were used to using them. And so what I'm trying to say is all of a sudden you're thrown in with a whole new culture of people. And that taught me a ton, the experience there. And the military was as much as I didn't like it, it was a very good experience for me.
And let's talk a little bit about the iron string. You mentioned the book a few minutes ago, and one of the things that I got reading the excerpts the other night a little bit is how love always defeats evil, and we see that, you know, historically, and it's not an easy fight, and it's not an automatic win for love all the time. But talk about that, because I think conceptually that's something, especially given the circumstances of what's going on in the world as we speak, with, you know, the Middle East, the Ukraine and Russia, you know, et cetera, how love always defeats evil. You know, love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, as far as the book is concerned, it's because of my family. It was the love that my dad had for his wife, my mom, Mary. And they, when he, try to condense the story, they were in a small farming community in Germany. My grandpa, who had, after World War I, came to the United States to work. And he worked in a factory in Passaic, New Jersey, and he sent money home. And that money, my dad, as an 8-year-old boy, took that money, and my grandma, and they bought land, and they bought horses and cattle and animals, farm animals, because in Hungary and Romania, and I keep saying Hungary, Romania, because it was a border town and it kept changing hands. So today it belongs to the Romanians. But so in this town, he became my dad, as an 8-year-old boy, was a farm boy, and he was building this up with my grandma from this American money that was sent. Money had no value, but land and animals had value. So, and my grandma, unfortunately, was an alcoholic. So my dad had a lot of responsibility as a little boy there. But the purpose was that they were going to try to bring my grandpa was going to bring my family, my dad and my grandma, to the United States. But in about 1932 or so, I think it was, they shut off immigration totally. So now they couldn't come. So my grandpa is in the States, family is still in Germany, but he can't bring them over because immigration's been shut off. I know people don't understand that today because they hear, oh, well, forever people could just come in. No, in those days you had to have permission to come. You had to, you got checked whether or not you had any illness. You were sent back if you did. I mean, it was tough. And they shut off immigration. So he goes back, and to make a long story short, because of their wealth now with land and animals, he's the mayor of this little town, and things are going great. My dad gets married to my mom. They have a little store plus their farm, and things are great. World War II comes. When the Germans took over each of these countries, Romania, Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia, as they took over these countries, every person, every young man of fighting age became a soldier. And those are the people they put on the front lines to die first. So as they were moving east over to Russia, my dad was part of this fodder. He wound up on the Russian front. And then when the war was over and the Russians were taking over now, my dad was captured. And he was being marched to Siberia. Now, they didn't know it was Siberia. We know today that's what happened to all those soldiers that were captured. They took them to the mines in Siberia. My dad escapes out of the back of an outhouse. I mean, it's almost like a movie. It could be a movie. Escapes, and they're shooting at him. But there's thousands of other soldiers, so they're not going to chase this one guy down. And he works his way back, all the way back to the town where they were. But of course, everybody now, or most people, have fled, because when the Russians were coming, my mom, my 2 sisters, and my grandparents had one day to load up a wagon and leave, because they were scared to death of the Russians. The Russians came in and raped the women and killed anybody of authority, and it was horrible. And so they are now fleeing, and they wound up, the moment they were over the border over the Danube River in Budapest, they were safe, because that's where the Allies were. So they wound up in a refugee camp there, and then they kept moving them from camp to camp. And eventually, as I said, they wound up in Austria, a camp in Austria. My dad works his way back, and he finds them there. And the reason that book talks about, it was that love for my mom, and of course his family. That's what kept him alive. That's what kept him going. And love, that love there's nothing more magic that when you are full of love for something or someone like that, you'll do everything you can to preserve yourself, but not for you, for them. And that makes it even more rewarding.
Wow.
So that's
Incredible.
simple.
Incredible.
Story.
What a beautiful story. And I know when I read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl years ago, the people who in the Holocaust had the dreams of seeing their family again seemed to be the people who made it, and the ones who just said, oh, well, you know, it is what it is. Well, the ones that seem to not, when they finally, you know, are interviewing these people afterwards, it just kind of brings up that emotion. And wow. So let's go back to your dad for a minute though. So he lends you $3,200. He says, okay, son, you're a young kid, but you got potential. I believe in you. What kind of pressure is that for a 22, 23-year-old kid?
Tremendous. Because picture this. So I turn over that check. With about a week later, this 40-foot tractor trailer backs up into our driveway.
Oh, man.
Well, think about how much soap in today's world you could buy for $50,000.
Wow.
How much soap would you get? Well, I literally got a basement full of soap. I mean, car shampoo and all-purpose cleaner and laundry detergent and furniture polish. And the walls in our basement had all these. So when all of this soap shows up, of course, now he's thinking, oh, my God, how's this kid going to sell all this soap? And so it eventually worked out, thank God. But that was the challenge.
Little pressure.
But you know what? You say a little pressure, and that's true. No, it was a lot of pressure. And that was good. Because you know what? If I'd have bought $100 worth of soap, I probably wouldn't be here today. Because, hey, in that 9 months when I wasn't doing well and it was tough and people were laughing at me and, you know, my friends called me Soapy and Bubbles and Mr. Clean. That's what they called me because they'd laugh at me for being in this soap business and stuff. And so would I have, if I wasn't committed, would I be here today? I don't know. I honestly don't know. Would I have driven 60 miles? I had to go 60 miles round trip to every meeting, Tuesday nights, Friday nights, and Saturday mornings for trainings. Would I have done that? Not making any money in those first months?
Yeah.
So, you know, there's something to be said for having a little bit of money involved, a little bit of investment in there. And of course, nowadays, everybody's, oh, that's a negative. Well, I don't know.
Skin in the game. Yeah.
Skin in the game.
Yeah. I can relate. When I started, same thing. It was borrowed money. It was like, you either sell this stuff or you better figure out a way to pay the people back, right? It was, you know, it was good pressure, you know, it made you get off your butt and do something, you know?
Exactly.
So let me ask you this. Mentorship's been very, very important to you. And I don't know today that some of the young people listening to us understand what we mean by mentorship. They may understand it when they look in the dictionary, but let's talk about some of the mentors, the people who taught you the business that got you, you know, where you were then and ultimately where you are today as a, you know, incredibly successful individual. Marty Day, I believe was the gentleman's name.
Yeah, Marty was very instrumental. In those days, we didn't have a multi-level system as we know it today because you didn't have very many levels because we didn't have computers to monitor that. So the idea was you got in the business and then you had a sliding scale of percentages that you could earn for how much you sold. And that's how we got the multi-level. So if I had a friend who sold 200, but he had two people who sold another 200 each, that's 600. So he got paid at the $600 level. They got $200. He kept the difference. So that was kind of the multi-level aspect to it. And so it was, so when you moved up and you gained another position, you became what we called an area coordinator and then a regional director. And those positions then earned an override from the area that you were working in. So for me Marty Day was my area coordinator at that time. So he was the guy who was doing the meetings and the trainings in that area that I was going to. And he was a super instrumental person in my life and my success in those early days because he was one tough dude. He was a construction worker. So you didn't give him any gruff. He was, you know, he was a tough guy. But he had done great in the business. He was, of course, full-time. He's this area coordinator. He's making himself $10,000 a month minimum. And again, 1970, that was a lot. That's like $100,000 a month today. So, but he was tough and he didn't take any BS. He didn't pat you on the butt and say, oh, well, it'll be okay. So I'll share a little story that made a big difference because people often ask me, you know, and you heard me say probably that in that first 9 months, I didn't do very well. And that's a true story. One day I had breakfast with him at the Holiday Inn and he said, Rudy, why aren't you doing well? Why aren't you doing better? And I had all this list of excuses, you know, because I'm young, my friends are this and they're not listening and blah, 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 blah. And I had all these excuses. And he looked at me and said, you know, Rudy, he said, the problem with your list is your name's not on it. What he meant was, right, all of those things weren't the problem. It's me that was the problem. And he said to me, if I ask you to do something, and this is what turned me around, believe it or not, he said, if I ask you to do something, will you promise to do it? I said, oh, anything, Marty. What do you want me to do? And he gave me out of his briefcase, he took 10 paper clips. And he said, put these in your left pocket. Put them in my left pocket. He said, now I want you to go out every day talking to people about your product, your opportunity. I don't even care what you say, but you got to talk to 10 people. And every time you talk to a person, you get to move a paper clip from your left pocket to your right pocket. I said, okay, I'll do it. He said, now you can't move 9 one day and 11 the next. It's got to be 10. I said, Marty, I'll do it. So I did. Now, I didn't use paper clips because they would tear my pants. You know, as I was pulling them out of my pocket, they would hook on. So I started using 10 pennies every morning. And I put these 10 pennies in my pocket, and I just, during the day while I was working, I'm going to college full time, I'm working full time. But all of a sudden now, my goal was moving these 10 pennies because I'd made a promise that I would do it. My goal was no longer to get distributors, no longer to sell product. It was to talk to people, get right down to the foundation. And I started to talk to them, hey, you know, I'm with this new company that's doing really well in the area, and I'm looking for some people. Might you be interested? No. I heard of things like, oh, okay, hang on. And I moved my penny from my left pocket to my right pocket. And pretty soon, because all of a sudden I didn't care about the yeses and nos, all I cared about was talking to people, doing the basics. All of a sudden, some people said, yeah, you know, maybe, yeah, I'd like to know about that. What do you got? Tell me about it. And pretty soon some people started to join. And honestly, that's what turned me around, because I got into what to this day, when I tell the story and I do training, I talk about activity. Get active, get busy, get doing the basics, doing what you need to do, and it'll come along eventually. You'll get better at it, right? It's like my hobby is racing. When I first started to race, I went out, I practiced and I practiced and I practiced. And, in racing, a half a second is a long time. On a 2-mile track, a half a second could make you a winner or a loser. And to get better, you have to go out every day and keep doing and just doing and just doing. And it's the same in our business. What Marty understood and what he knew was that my problem wasn't that I wasn't doing well. My problem was I wasn't talking to enough people. Because every time I talked to somebody and they said no, I'd get discouraged. I'd be down. And I wouldn't talk to anybody until I went to the next meeting and they pumped me back up, right? Got my attitude straight. And he understood that. So what he did was he just got me talking to people and not caring if I got a yes or a no, because my goal wasn't yes or no. My goal was talking to people. And that really is what changed it. And so we talk about mentors, a simple thing like that. You know, you could have a mentor that gives you information, thousands of pages of information, but that one little thing that makes a difference for you can change your life.
Love it. So let's talk a little bit about another mentor of yours, guy who very famous, of course, Mr. Jim Rohn.
Yeah, well, in those days, he was just Jim. He was in our company as a trainer, but he had been a distributor, of course, and now he was going around training. And man, I'm honestly, John, I just bought into everything Jim said. I was mesmerized. I was a 23-year-old kid, and everything he had to say, I needed. And the first thing that got through to me, and to this day, I use it in my trainings, and that's for things to change, you got to change. For things to get better, you got to get better. I bought into that philosophy 100%. And, you know, Jim used to say, you got to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And a job will take care of itself, but you got to work on you. And I bought into that philosophy big time.
This made so much sense. When you said that, I got goosebumps. That's the first thing I heard. First big meeting I went to, I was still in college, 1983. And I joined the business I was in April 18th. I heard Ronald Reagan speak at my college commencement on May 18th. And sometime in June, I don't know if it was the 18th or not, I heard that same statement in Hartford, Connecticut. And, you know, like yourself, I never heard that kind of stuff at home. My family were blue collar people. And you never heard that kind of philosophy. In other words, you know, for things to change, I got to change. Well, I thought the government had to change and all that. And it all goes back. I didn't know who Jim Rohn was at the time. But, you know, when you said that, I got goosebumps, because I think so many people I interview that have been in the industry a long time, that have had great careers, great lives, more importantly, because the careers is part of our overall life, have adopted that philosophy in all things. So I just love it. And was there another mentor besides Marty and Jim? Was there somebody else that comes to mind?
Yes, but people that you would know, there was a guy named 𝐄𝐍𝐼𝐒, very instrumental in helping me. The owner of that company, his name was Bill Bailey. He was very philosophical and did some great trainings and gave a lot of good information about developing personally also. with a little different approach to it than gym, but also very, very effective. So yes.
That was an amazing organization. How important has personal development been to you, and does it continue now in your later years? Are you still not only practicing it but studying it as the art form that it is?
Yes, sir. And of course, in my companies, I have always done basic training. I mean, many people who knew Jim or have been in Jim, they come to my seminars. They say, "Gee, I thought I was listening to Jim Rohn," because that's who I learned from. I don't know anything different, and I'm happy to give credit. All the credit is due him. But all I do is I regurgitate what he taught me, and it works. And again, to this day, I use those same philosophies. They don't change. Times change, people change, things change, but those basic principles, those God-given basic principles, they work.
So Rudy, why MLM now? And let me kind of set the table for this, because that's a kind of a open-ended question, right? Why MLM now? You know, we've seen the gig economy these last, whatever it's been, let's call it 10 years or so, right? With, you know, Uber and Uber Eats and so on and so forth, things that people can, you know, pick up their phone, get on an app and for free engage in, and maybe make some money, maybe not, but for the most part, make some money. So we compete for those part-time people who are looking for that side hustle or whatever you want to call it now, right? We used to call it, you know, plan B, right, in the old days, but now it's a side hustle, I guess is the right terminology. But whatever it is, I mean, to your point, people needed to make money in 1970, they needed to make money in 1983, they needed to make money in 2024, and they'll need to make money long after we're gone. That being the case, why MLM today?
Same reason has always been. Because yes, there are other side hustles out there in this gig economy, as you call it, but they're nothing but working a job. Yeah, you can drive for Uber, but if tomorrow you don't drive because you're sick, how much money are you going to make? You go out and you drive for 10 hours this week, 20 hours this week, 40 hours this week. Yeah, you'll put some cash in your pocket, but what did you build for your future? Nothing. You might as well have gone to work at, I don't know, Starbucks or somewhere else. Now, you do have a little time freedom by being in Uber or driving for Uber Eats or whatever, but you are not building something for your future. If I would have invested all those same hours in that I did in the early days of building my business, if I would have invested those same hours of driving a taxi cab, right, which I could have done. I mean, they were around back then, just like Uber is today. I could have driven a taxi. I could have gotten into some other things. I don't know, driven a bread truck or whatever, delivered newspapers every morning like people did in those days. So those were part-time gigs, if you will. Wasn't exactly what it is today, but they were around back then. But you're not building something for your future. That's the difference. And in this business, in our industry today, it's no different. We are teaching people how to build something. When I get into an Uber with a young man, I talk to him. I talk to them about, hey, how do you like what you're doing? Oh, it's great, but you know, I've been driving, blah, blah, blah. And they've got complaints about it because they've got to do it. It's just like a job. It's just a job where they have some time freedom. But if you build my business, you've got time freedom, you've got financial freedom, you've got residual income you can earn. I mean, there's all kinds of benefits to what we do as opposed to those other options.
So let me ask you this. Now you've owned a number of companies over the years, and you currently still do. But you started out as a distributor, obviously, way back when, you know, your dad lended you money, and you said, you know, this guy made a cold call and, you know, set up a career. I mean, I wonder if that guy knew that he set up a career that's resulted in billions of dollars in sales and probably hundreds of millions of dollars in commissions with a cold call, right? It probably has no idea. But to that point, you've changed so many people's lives for the better. How does that make you feel now, looking back, when they come up to you and they say, Rudy, you taught me this, and maybe they're not even with your company. Maybe they're elsewhere in the industry, right? How does that make you feel?
John, that's why I still do it to this day. You know, people often say, Rudy, why do you still do this at your age? You don't need the money. You don't need, because I love what we do in changing people's lives. Because again, if it wasn't for this industry, where would I be? I don't know, a chicken farmer. What would have happened to me? Worked in a factory somewhere or retail store like I was doing? This industry gave me everything. And so I will always be involved somehow. You know, people say, are you retired? I say, no, I'm not retired. I'm in rewind. It took me 50 years to wind up. Now it's going to take me 50 years to wind down.
You don't seem like the kind of guy that retirement would be agree with. Along
No.
those lines, so let's come back though. We started this off by casually saying that, you along with Jerry Brasfield, Larry Thompson, and also Stan Frederick, okay, that you four gentlemen were the first recipients of the Lifetime Achievement Award by the DSN, the Direct Selling News. And that had to impact you where you got the award and you looked at all those years, all that effort, all that work, all that personal development, all this blood, sweat, and tears. Because let's face it, we both know this is not an easy business that we're in, right? Because it's a volunteer army. When you look back at that, that achievement, the night you got it, if you could reflect on that for a minute, how did that make you kind of feel? Not only obviously good, but how did that make you feel in terms of the impact that you had, that when you stand before, our creator, and I think you and I share a common faith, okay? And he says, okay, Rudy, good job, my faithful servant, and here's what you accomplished. How did that make you feel? I'd love to just get that moment, if you would, that you were, brought up, got the award. What happened then? Let me shut up and let you talk.
I think probably best of all was that my whole family was there. My son Brandon, and of course my wife Pam, and my grandkids were there. And so that was probably the best part, because that's who I did this all for all these years. And but to know, how can I say this correctly? To me, what it represented was not what I'd achieved, but all those people around the world that I was able to help, that people who gave me something, and now I could pass that on. Just as you say, with my religion, one of the things I love about my religion, I love going on mission trips. Why? Because I'm sharing what I believe I have. What's been given me, I need to share. As a matter of fact, it says that those who are given much are expected to share much. Now, it says it in nicer words than that, better words than I can put, but you know what I mean. And so to me, that's what it was. I was being recognized not for what I did, but for what was done to me that I can go out and share with other people. And so, yes, I was very proud to get that, but I'm more proud of what we've done for a lot of other people.
Wow. Love it. Love it. And let's have some fun now. Okay. The fruits of the labor. You've worked hard for all of these years. And I know you've got some hobbies. And I know not only hobbies, but I tripped across a picture the other day. I think you had number 60 on and your company's name. Okay, that you were racing a car. I'm not sure where exactly it was, but let's talk about auto racing a little bit, motorcycle racing a little bit, boat racing a little bit.
Nope, I don't do boats.
You don't do boats, okay.
I don't do boats. And I don't race motorcycles today. I did when I was younger, but not now. But I still ride a lot. I still have a Harley, and I love riding a Harley often. But my hobby has been racing for a lot of years, and I still do it. And, again, people say, Rudy, at your age, why are you still doing that? You're 77 years old and you're driving a race car. Well, number one, I can. And number two, I like it. So why shouldn't I do it? Just because I'm older, as long as I can do it, I want to do it. Now, I don't do what I used to do. I used to be very involved in it, but I still do 6-7 races a year. Last weekend, I was in Portland racing in the Trans Am series. So yeah, it's fun. And then my motorcycle, I get on with the local HOG club, Harley Owners Group. Mm-hmm. We ride several times a week. Not long, we go for 2-3 hours, and then we stop for lunch somewhere, and that's our ride. But we do it often. Maybe 50 to 100 rides a year that way. And I have a plane. I have a small 182 Cessna that I like, and just to go up and fly around. I don't do much with it, but go to lunch and just booked this Friday. We're going down to Galveston and grab some lunch with a friend. So that kind of thing. And it helps you stay young. You don't look at yourself as a number. You look at yourself as, hey, how active can I be?
It's inspirational, especially at 77 to still be racing cars. Now yeah. I have to ask, and this is not a multi-level question along those lines. This is from my son, who's 20, who was a motorhead. I mean, he's rebuilt the 1991 Mercedes that I bought him as a high school graduation present. And since then, he's gotten into our industry and he's had a little bit of success. He's going to college full time. He's had a little success doing some stuff for my company. So he's made a few dollars, and every dollar that he makes, and somebody told me this, I think it's good advice, is that a kid that's into cars will never get in trouble with drugs or alcohol because he'll spend all his money on cars, which he does.
Amen.
Boxes come here every day from all over the world, mostly from Germany because it's an old Mercedes. He's rebuilt that thing. But anyway, he said to me, he said, when you interview Rudy, can you ask him how fast? What was the fastest car he ever drove? What was the speed?
Oh, okay. Okay, first let me answer the question. The fastest I have probably been is around probably 195, maybe at Daytona but speed is not the key. Anybody can go fast in a straight line. Down the straightaway in, I don't know, one of the longest straightaways up in Seattle, because it's a drag strip. So it's a long straightaway, and the end of it, there we're probably getting 165 or 70. But anybody can do that. That's not a big deal. Now, the key is when you get to the end of that straightaway at 170, and you got to go 180 degrees the other way, how fast are you going to get in there and get out of that turn? That's where it counts.
I bet. And,
Oh.
and those raceways are banked too, aren't they? Aren't they kind of like up on a bank kind of?
No, I don't do circle track.
Ah, okay.
I do road courses only. Well, I have done circle track, but mostly today I only do road courses.
We when he started college, I took him over. There's a place south of Dallas that you can, for $500, you can rent 3 cars, super high end, Porsche Turbo, Lamborghini, all the key ones. And he did that, and he went about 120. But you got a guy that can override you, obviously, in the vehicle. But anyway, he asked me. He said, "You got to ask him." So I said, "Okay."
That's how I got started. I as a friends and I in California, when I was living in California, and I had the I think Symmetry company at that time. We decided, we want to go to one of those little racing schools just for a fun 3 or 4 days. Man, and I got hooked. That was not a smart thing to do. That was the most expensive 3 or 4 days of my life. Because it never stopped paying after that. I needed to make a lot of money in our business so I could afford to race.
Your wife's probably saying no more hobbies, no more hobbies. So Rudy, just kind of in wrapping this up here. First of all, I appreciate your time. I know how busy you are between your businesses and your family and racing and everything else. But what would your advice be? Like I said earlier, we have listeners with all different type of situations, right? From all different companies. We've got, depending on the show, we have, anywhere between, a couple thousand people that listen, sometimes to tens of thousands, depending on who's interviewed. And all those people are like you were back in 1970 for the most part. Some of them are very, very successful, but most of them, the majority of them are saying, hey, you know what? Economy's tough. Times are tough. I need to make the changes. What would be those couple of basic mindset type of things that they need to go through to examine their business where it's currently at, to redefine it, to get it where they want it to be down the road?
Some of them are not going to like my answer. Here's why. One of the things that's happened to our industry in this last couple of years, the pandemic was one of the worst things that happened to us. And I think one of the other terrible things that happened to us is social media. Because like everything out there, every tool can be a blessing or a disgrace. And I think what happened to people was the social media came along, great tool to use. Then the pandemic came along and the business just boomed. It wasn't just our companies. I mean, we doubled sales overnight because people were all sitting home not doing anything, right? So people were buying and people were joining and the business just boomed. And they got so used to sitting home doing the business over social media that all of a sudden, when all of that was done and people go back to work and now they're back, they can't go back to work. Many of the distributors have this mindset, I'm just going to stay home and do social media. And I can relate it to this, John, if you don't mind me elaborating on this, because I think this is a concern for not just our companies, but everybody. So when I got in this industry, and I ran out of my list of names, which was the primary way of starting your business. When I ran out of my list of names, one of the things I started to do was I started to put newspaper ads in, right? Because, now newspaper ads, our people today listening don't even know what a newspaper ad is probably. But that was a way of trying to attract some people. And I got some people started in the business off of the newspaper. But you know what happened? When they came off of the newspaper, even though I was still communicating with them personally, what did they want to do when they joined the business? They wanted to put ads in the paper. I said, let's make your list of names. Let's have a meeting at your house. Let's get things going. Let's have some phone calls. I'm going to put an ad in the paper like you did. You understand? And then what happened? Then a couple of years later, and I'll condense this all for you, but a few years later, this thing came along. Remember the tapes? We had these little cassette tapes, and it was a company, Dead Doctors Don't Lie. Do you remember that?
I sure do, yeah.
This doctor had come up with this tape, And all they did was send out these tapes that were getting people to buy this product and start in this business. And all they did was send out tapes. So every company was out there making these little cassette tapes. And you know what? For a while it worked. But sooner or later it ran out because most of the people who were joining off that tape, they weren't building a business. They would just wanted to send out these tapes. They weren't building people like we build. They weren't doing the basics that we do in our business. This is direct selling. It's not advertising selling. It's not social media selling. It's direct selling. Then the next phase comes along, cassette tapes. You remember the cassette tapes, the big square cassette tapes? What was that company? Cambridge Diet, I think it was, that had the guy from Star Trek.
William Shatner.
Yeah, William Shatner, right? And so they put out this cassette tape about their business and their products with William Shatner on it, and boom, the company's blowing up. So what does every company do, including me, my company? We make cassette tapes, right? Mm-hmm. That's how I first met Stuart Johnson, who is a great guy, as you know. He made one of our first videotapes back in Video Plus. And we had Rayford Johnson, and we had Alan Thicke, and we had these celebrities on it. And what would people do? Send out these cassette tapes and get people started. And then what did those people want to do? Well, they just wanted to send out cassette tapes. They weren't building a business. They weren't doing meetings in all. Then the next phase comes along. Then the internet comes along, right? And I can remember going to a DSA meeting, and there were people who ran big companies at the front of the room saying, our industry is done because nobody's going to want to buy from us anymore. This internet's going to take over all of our business. We're done. This was back in the, early 90s when internet come along, right? And so what I'm trying to say is there are all these various tools over the years, from a newspaper to tapes to videos to social to internet, and then now today social media. And every one of those tools is valuable tool. They don't build a business. Will they get you people? Sure, they'll get you people, but they're not going to stay because you're not building a relationship. Now, some people tell, oh, no, over social media, you can build relationships. Oh, yeah? Not like having them on a phone call, not like having them in your house, not like having them at a coffee shop, not like getting them on a three-way call with you and me. That's how we build this business. It's one person at a time, because I still believe in the philosophy, we build people, people build our business. If you're only going to go out there and regurgitate your business and your products to everybody on earth and hope someone buys, yeah, you'll sell something. But you can put an ad in the newspaper and do that. You can put an ad on TV and do that. You know, I've often had people come to me and say, well, Rudy, what about these, what do they call it now? Affiliate marketing, you know, where it's just one level, and that's not our business. Does it work? I guess it does. I mean, but that's for a certain kind of person, that'll work. But that's not our business. We build relationships, and then people build our business, right? The most valuable asset somebody brings me when they come to this company is not money. It's not the most valuable asset they bring me is their friends and relatives. But they're going to share our products and our business opportunity, because not only do we sell products, and we sell a lot of product, but we still sell hope and opportunity. And when you say in today's world and the way this economy is, this is our time. People need us more than ever before. How are they going to pay that gas bill, the gas prices that have gone up so high? How are they going to cover this? In the last, what did I just hear? In the last 3.5 years, food prices are up almost 30%. Gas prices are 50%. Home mortgages are up. Everything is up in the double digits, but their wages aren't going up. So we have the ideal scenario to change people's lives, but it has to be done through social media. By not using social media, but by using our personalness and our direct selling skill, people to people.
You know, I'd love your reaction to this. We I feel like we've known each other 40 years because we think the same on this and a lot of things, frankly. But it seems to me that the guys who espouse the most about social media, if you sat down and said, show me a check where you were not positioned, you were not given a spot, you bought your distributor kit from the company with your own money, and you went out and built, and you're espousing social media. And like yourself, I'm not against social media. I use it. But at the end of the day, it's a tool. It's not the way you build the business. It's just part of the business, right? Like the cassette tapes in the old days, et cetera, et cetera. I'd love your thoughts on this. It seems like any time I've confronted one of those people, and I wouldn't even have them on the show, to be honest with you, that tell me social media, it's like, show me a check for $10,000 that you built using social media. Doesn't exist. I think maybe it does, but I personally haven't found it in all the people I talk to. Like yourself, I talk to people all over the world. I haven't found it yet.
Well, there are a few people that they call themselves influencers, so they have a huge market out there. So they'll go out in their in one of my companies, our skincare company, we have a social media person who sells a lot of products at retail to her base, but that's not duplicatable, and she's not going to get a lot of other people who can do what she can do because they're not influencers. They don't have a 10,000 people viewing audience or 20,000, whatever she has. So it's not like it isn't there. Somebody may have, but that's not our business.
Right.
That's not who we are. That's a whole different way of doing business. So
not duplicatable. Yeah, that's
it's not duplicatable.
It's the biggest
and we are in a business of duplication. If you can learn how to take yourself and duplicate yourself into other people, you win.
Exactly. Of course, the point on that, and I love your thoughts on that, is, to your point, the new person, right? The chicken farmer way back, the college student way back. If the person says, well, use your social media, and you go, what social media? Whereas if you said to them, go back to the 10 penny principle or 10 paperclip principle, hey, can you talk to 10 of your friends about this product? Oh, I can do that. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can do that.
That's where the future comes from. That's where your residual income comes from. That's where building a business comes from, by building other people.
Exactly. So let me ask you this, Rudy, to wrap up. Okay. Somebody young who's on the call, they're 25, 30 years old. Maybe they're newly married. They're starting a family. They've got all the expenses that you just mentioned there, how everything has gone up so significantly, right? They're where you were way back, where I was way back in our lives, right? When you look at our industry, what's the future look like 20, 30, 40 years down the road, in your opinion? What's it going to look like as an industry?
I think it's going to look similar to what it looks like today, because all of these situations that we're going through today have been duplicated in the past. As I said to you, when we had the cassette tapes, that was a phase people went through. And then the newspaper phase and the internet phase when it first came out. As long as we get back to our roots, we're always going to be this business, because personal relationships are still going to be a way to build. Will there be new things? Yeah. What's the next tool that's coming along called AI? But is that going to build your business? No. It'll help. It's going to be a great tool, but use it to build relationships. That's the key. Learn how to get your list of names, meet people, develop relationships, because relationships last. Just selling the product and having a customer, somebody else is going to blow an area tomorrow, and with the next hot product that comes along. But if you build relationships, people stick with you.
Well, Rudy, I want to thank you, not only for myself, but also for the industry. Without people like yourself, the three other gentlemen we mentioned, the Mary Kays, the Rich DeVos, the Jay Van Andel, the Bobby DePues, others that names perhaps I don't know, or you don't know, but without you guys going through all the baptismal fires there in the 60s and 70s, there would not have been what we have today, which is such a great and diverse opportunity around the world. So I want to thank you on behalf of the industry for everything that you've done, accomplished, and continue to do, because at 77, I got a feeling you're just getting started.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say getting started, but I'm certainly not going to quit.
There you go.
So thanks a lot, John. Thanks for not just for having me on, of course, but for what you're doing for the industry, because this is how young people can learn. And again, if out of this entire conversation we had today, there was one little tip for Sally or for John or for Mary that came out of this, then it's all worth it. And you do that for people by having these podcasts.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Leave Nothing to Chance. If you want to know more about what it takes to succeed in the network marketing space, join us again next week for another amazing episode. For additional resources and to connect with John Soloder, visit leavingnothingtochance.com. Don't forget to leave a review, and we'll see you next time.